The rain tapped against the glass walls of Knight & Co., Manhattan headquarters, a steady percussion against the skyline. Daniel Knight leaned back in his leather chair, staring out at the lights of New York bleeding into the autumn drizzle. The city never slept, but tonight it felt distant, almost mocking. Tomorrow, he was getting married, not to a woman he loved, not to someone he chose, not in front of cameras or flashing bulbs, where the press would swoon over the wedding of the year. His wedding would be small, private, silent, because it wasn't about love at all. It was about debt, about duty, about family. The words of his father, Richard Knight, still echoed in his head from the family council meeting a week ago. David Evans saved my life 30 years ago. We owe him. His daughter needs stability. Her family is on the brink. You will marry Lily Evans. That's how we settle this debt, Daniel had argued. He could have written a check, bought her family a house, paid off their debts 10 times over. But Richard had been firm. In the Knight family, obligations weren't repaid with money. They were repaid with loyalty, with sacrifice, with control. And so Daniel, the 35-year-old CEO of Knight & Co., was about to take a bride he barely knew, a woman who had no place in his world of glass towers and ruthless boardrooms. On the other side of Brooklyn, Lily Evans sat on the edge of her narrow bed, hands clasped tightly in her lap. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the old radiator and the faint sounds of traffic drifting through the thin windows. The contract lay on her nightstand, thick with legal clauses, non-disclosure agreements, financial stipulations, restrictions on public appearances. A marriage, yes, but one built on conditions, not affection. Lily stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror across the room. Her hair was pinned up, her makeup light, her wedding dress sent over by one of Knight & Co.'s assistants was simple. No lace, no jewels, no trail of silk sweeping across marble floors. Just a plain white dress that fit her frame and nothing more. She thought of her mother, still in the hospital, medical bills piling up like sandbags before a storm. She thought of the eviction notices that had nearly pushed them out of the small house her father once fought to. Keep, if this is the price, she whispered to herself. Then I'll pay it. There was no fantasy of romance here. No daydream of forever. Just survival and gratitude for the debt her father had once repaid with his own sacrifice. The ceremony took place in a small chapel outside the city. No reporters, no photographers, no flowers draped over pews. Just Daniel, Lily, a minister to lawyers, and the suffocating silence of duty. Daniel stood tall in a charcoal suit, every line pressed and perfect. His expression gave nothing away, no nerves, no joy, not even irritation, just blank resolve. When Lily entered, bouquet of white lilies trembling in her hands, their eyes met for the first time. She offered a polite nod. Daniel returned it with a curt dip of his chin. The minister's voice carried through the empty room, echoing off the wooden rafters. The vow's words meant to be sacred felt hollow. Do you, Daniel Knight, take this woman? I do, Daniel said, his tone flat. Do you, Lily Evans? Her throat tightened, but she forced the words out. I do. The exchange of rings was mechanical. The bands were plain platinum, unengraved, unremarkable, symbols without weight. You may kiss the bride, the minister said. Daniel leaned closer, brushed the barest kiss against her cheek, and stepped back as if fulfilling a formality. When the papers were signed, it was over. Just like that, Lily Evans was Lily Knight. The limousine ride to the Knight estate was silent. Rain streaked the tinted windows, and the city lights blurred into ribbons of gold and white. Lily sat with her hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the passing streets. Daniel glanced at her once or twice, but she never looked his way. When the car pulled up to the sprawling estate in the suburbs of Manhattan, Lily felt her breath catch. The mansion looked like something from a magazine. White stone walls, manicured gardens, a glittering fountain in the drive. But there was no warmth in it, just cold perfection inside. Daniel handed her a set of keys. "Your room is upstairs, second floor, east wing. I'll be in the west wing. We won't cross paths often." Lily blinked, trying not to let the sting show. Understood. He looked at her for a moment, as if weighing whether she truly grasped the situation. "This isn't a love story. Don't expect anything from me, and I won't expect anything from you." Her lips curved into a bitter half-smile. "Don't worry. I don't." She turned and climbed the staircase, her footsteps muffled against the polished wood. The hem of her white dress whispered along the floor as she disappeared into the east wing. That night, Daniel stayed in his office until well past midnight, drowning himself in contracts and spreadsheets. Marriage hadn't changed anything. Not his workload, not his routine, not the emptiness he carried around like a second skin. Across the estate, Lily sat by the window of her new bedroom, sketchbook open on her lap. She wasn't an artist by profession, but she loved to draw small comforts in a world that offered her little else. She sketched the outline of the garden below, the fountain, the roses that would bloom come spring. The wedding band glinted faintly on her hand. She stared at it for a long time, then closed the book and whispered into the stillness, "It's just paper. Nothing more." And yet, deep down, both Daniel and Lily felt something shifts, subtle, invisible, but real. A thread had been tied, fragile and unwanted, binding to strangers in a marriage neither of them had chosen. What they didn't know was how that thread would one day pull them toward something neither had believed in for years: love. The first morning of marriage felt no different from the ones before it. Lily sat alone at the long mahogany dining table, staring at the untouched plate in front of her. A crystal chandelier hung above, glinting in the pale morning sun, but the seat across from her was empty. A fresh pot of coffee steamed gently, yet the silence in the cavernous dining room felt suffocating. Footsteps echoed down the staircase. Daniel appeared, suit perfectly pressed, tie already knotted. He barely glanced at the food laid out by the house staff before reaching for his leather briefcase. "You don't have to wait for me in the mornings," he said, adjusting his cup. His tone was clipped, professional, as though they were colleagues in a meeting instead of husband and wife. "I wasn't waiting," Lily replied softly, though the lie caught in her throat. "I was just having breakfast." Daniel gave a curt nod and moved toward the door. The heavy front doors shut behind him with a thud, leaving Lily in silence once again. Days blurred into weeks. Daniel left before dawn most mornings and rarely returned before midnight. The mansion felt like a museum grand, expensive and empty. Lily filled the silence with small rituals, brewing tea, tending to the roses in the back garden, sketching in her notebook while sitting by the window. She told herself she didn't care that her husband barely acknowledged her. She hadn't entered this marriage for love. Still, the emptiness pressed down on her. Sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, she wondered if this was how loneliness felt when dressed up in designer clothes and marble floors at dinner. The staff would set the table for two, but Lily always ate alone. The chair across from her remained unoccupied, a constant reminder of the contract she'd signed. One Friday evening, the unexpected happened. Daniel came home before dark. Lily was curled up on the sofa in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, watching an old romantic comedy on her laptop. The glow from the screen lit her face as the fictional couple kissed under fairy lights. The click of the front door startled her. She quickly closed the laptop and sat up. "You're home early," she said. "Board meeting was cancelled," Daniel replied, setting his briefcase on the console table. His eyes flicked toward the sofa, then the laptop she'd shut. "What were you watching?" "Just a movie," she said quickly, embarrassed by the thought of him seeing the silly, sentimental scene. Daniel's lips twitched almost imperceptibly before he turned away. "Don't let me interrupt." Lily forced a polite smile. "It's fine. I was just heading to bed." She hurried upstairs before the silence could stretch any further. Daniel watched her go, an odd weight settling in his chest. He poured himself a glass of scotch and sat alone in the dim living room. The house had always been quiet, but now, for the first time, he noticed how hollow it truly felt. The following weekend, Richard Knight hosted a family dinner at the Knight estate in Connecticut. Daniel drove them both, though he said little on the way. Lily sat quietly in the passenger seat, palms damp as she rehearsed polite answers in her head. The Knight family was exactly what she'd imagined: sharp suits, designer dresses, and icy smiles. Every handshake carried judgment. Every glance measured her worth. "She's ordinary," one aunt whispered, just loud enough for Lily to hear. "She doesn't belong here," another relative murmured. Lily smiled tightly, pretending not to notice, but the words cut deep. Daniel, seated beside her at the long dining table, heard it too. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He'd grown up in this world. He knew how vicious it could be. Lily, he thought, would have to learn as well. That night, back at the Manhattan mansion, Lily slipped out to the garden. The moon hung low, casting silver light across the roses she'd begun tending. She sat on the stone bench, sketchbook balanced on her lap, trying to draw anything that didn't feel like the weight in her chest. The crunch of footsteps on gravel made her glance up. Daniel stood nearby, a glass of whiskey in hand. For once, his tie was loosened, his expression not as guarded. "They were cruel tonight," he said after a pause. His voice was low, almost reluctant. Lily lowered her gaze. "It doesn't matter. I've learned to let people think what they want." "Still," he said, "it isn't right." She let out a quiet laugh, though it carried no humor. "This marriage isn't about what's right. It's about paying a debt. And debts don't come with kindness." Daniel studied her in the moonlight. She wasn't glamorous like the women he usually encountered at galas or boardrooms. There was no polished veneer, no rehearsed charm. She was raw, honest, and it unsettled him. "You don't have to expect anything from me," he said finally. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed something heavier. "I don't," Lily replied, closing her sketchbook. "And I won't." She rose and walked back toward the house, leaving him alone with the scent of roses and the uneasy realization that he cared more about her words than he should have. The weeks stretched on. They continued to orbit each other like strangers sharing the same address. Yet sometimes, when Daniel came home late at night, he caught sight of Lily in the garden, sketching under the porch light, her hair tumbling over her shoulders, and though he never said it out loud, Daniel began to wonder if the silence of the mansion felt quite so empty anymore. The following week, Daniel arrived at night and Co-Est headquarters to find an unexpected guest waiting outside his office. Veronica Hale, his assistant, announced with a strained smile, as though the name itself carried weight. Daniel's stomach tightened. He hadn't seen Veronica in over 2 years, not since their relationship had collapsed under the pressure of her ambition and his refusal to bend. And yet here she was, standing in the glass-walled corridor as if she owned it, sleek in a tailored black dress, her dark hair cascading like polished silk over her shoulders. "Daniel," she purred as he approached, her red lips curving into a smile. "You look unchanged." "Veronica," he said flatly, "what are you doing here? Is that how you greet an old friend?" She brushed past his assistant and stepped directly into his office without waiting for permission. Daniel followed, jaw tight. "We're not friends." She glanced around the office, her eyes lingering on the floor-to-ceiling windows and the carefully curated modern art on the walls, still as impeccable as ever. "You really haven't lost your touch." "Cut to the point," Daniel said. "Why are you here?" Veronica finally turned to face him fully. "I heard a rumor, a very interesting one. Something about you being married." The words were sharp, deliberate. Daniel's expression didn't change, though his pulse quickened. "Rumors spread easily in this city," he said evenly. Her smile widened. "So it's true." He didn't answer. Silence, in his world, was confirmation enough. "Daniel Knight, secretly married," she mused, walking closer. "I have to admit, I didn't expect that. Who's the lucky woman?" "Some heiress your father hand-picked for you. A socialite desperate for the Knight name." Daniel's jaw hardened. "Her name is Lily, and this conversation is over." But Veronica only laughed, a sound low and mocking. "Lily, pretty, ordinary, and hidden. Which means she's either your weakness or your mistake." That evening, when Daniel returned to the mansion, Lily was in the garden again, sketching the outlines of the fountain under the fading sunset. She looked up when he approached, her expression careful as always. "You're home earlier than usual," she said. "I had an unexpected visitor," he replied, loosening his tie. "Veronica Hale," her pencil paused midline. "Veronica Hale, the Veronica Hale, CEO of Hale Enterprises." "Yes." His tone was clipped, and Daniel hesitated. He wasn't sure why he was telling her this at all, but the thought of Veronica sniffing around their private arrangement unsettled him more than he cared to admit. "She knows about the marriage," he said finally. Lily's chest tightened. "How? I don't know. But she'll use it." Lily set down her sketchbook. "If she goes public, people will start asking questions. About us. About why this marriage was kept secret." "I'll handle it," Daniel said firmly. Her gaze lingered on him, skeptical but resigned. "I hope you can, because I don't have the armor you do." True to Lily's prediction, rumors began circulating within days. Whispers among shareholders, speculative columns in society magazines. Daniel Knight, secretly married, splashed across digital tabloids. At first, no one could confirm anything. But Veronica was clever. She planted just enough breadcrumbs, a half-truth here, a pointed comment there to make people hungry for more. Lily felt the weight of it when she ventured into the city. Paparazzi hadn't found her yet, but in upscale cafes and stores, she noticed the curious stares, the hushed murmurs. People in Daniel's world knew, and they were waiting for the story to break. That night, over dinner, she'd set out, but knew Daniel wouldn't attend. The mansion phone rang. Lily answered, expecting a staff member. Instead, Veronica's voice slid through the line. "Lily Evans," she said smoothly. "Or should I say, Mrs. Knight?" Lily froze. "Who is this? You don't know me. But I know you. I know why you're here, in that mansion, wearing a ring that doesn't belong to you." Lily's grip on the phone tightened. "What do you want?" Veronica's laugh was cold. "To remind you that Daniel doesn't stay with women like you. He outgrows them. And when he does, you'll be nothing but a footnote." The line clicked dead. Lily stood motionless, the dial tone buzzing in her ear, her heart hammering. She'd known this marriage would be hard, but she hadn't expected the battlefield to come knocking so soon. Later that night, Daniel found her in the kitchen, sitting at the island with her phone face down on the counter. Her shoulders were tense, her eyes distant. "Something happened," he said, reading her body language instantly. Lily looked up at him, her voice quiet. "She called me Veronica." She nodded. "She said I don't belong here, that I'll just be a mistake." Daniel's fists clenched at his sides. "She had no right. She doesn't need a right. She just needs to be louder than me. And she will be." He stepped closer, his voice low, resolute. "Don't listen to her. She wants to rattle you. Don't let her." Lily met his eyes. For a fleeting second, she saw something fierce behind the usual steels, something protective, and it startled her. "I'll try," she whispered. Daniel studied her a moment longer before turning away, but his mind was already racing. Veronica had drawn first blood, and he wasn't about to let her win. The rumors hadn't yet broken wide, but Daniel could feel the shift in the air at Knight and Co. The board was restless. Shareholders whispered in corners, and Veronica seemed to appear at every industry event. Her smile just sharp enough to cut. Daniel had learned to ignore noise. But lately, that noise wasn't just about Hemet, was about Lily, and that made it harder to tune out. One rainy Tuesday, Daniel returned home earlier than usual, his shoulders tight from a brutal day of negotiations. A massive development project in Midtown was collapsing under zoning disputes, and the board wanted answers. Billions were at stake. He walked into the study and found Lily seated at the desk, sketchbook open, papers scattered. She looked up, startled. "You're home," she said, almost guiltily. "What are you doing in here?" His tone was sharper than he intended. She glanced down at the papers. "I was just looking through some of the project files you left. The Midtown proposal." His brow furrowed. "Those aren't for you." "I know," she said quickly, "but I couldn't help it. The plans were sitting out, and I noticed something." Daniel's instinct was to shut her down, but something in her expression, nervous yet determined, made him pause. "What exactly did you notice?" She hesitated, then pushed the sketchbook toward him. Inside, she'd redrawn parts of the site plan with neat pencil strokes. "You're planning luxury condos, right next to a public school," she explained. "And the zoning board is fighting you because they think you're ignoring community impact. But if you restructured the layout like this, you could include a small public park, a pedestrian walkway. It wouldn't just smooth approval, it would actually make the development more appealing for buyers." Daniel studied the sketch. Her lines weren't professional blueprints, but they were thoughtful, smart. He could immediately see how her changes might diffuse the zoning battle. "You just thought of this?" he asked slowly. She shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "I grew up in a neighborhood where developers didn't care about the people already living there. My dad used to complain that nobody ever asked what the community needed. When I saw your plans, it jumped out at me." Daniel leaned back, considering her. He was used to consultants charging millions to make suggestions like this, most of them useless. And yet here was Lily, the woman he barely knew, finding a solution that had eluded his entire team. "You realize this could actually work," he said. Her eyes widened. "Really?" "Yes." He closed the sketchbook, his voice firm. "Don't touch my files again without asking. But thank you." The corner of her mouth lifted, just slightly. "You're welcome." 2 days later, Daniel brought the revised concept to the board. The moment he laid out the community integration plan, the tone of the meeting shifted. The zoning board approved the changes within a week. Investors praised the forward-thinking approach, and though Daniel never mentioned Lily's name, he carried the knowledge silently. She'd saved him at home. Things between them began to shift in small, imperceptible ways. One evening, Daniel walked into the kitchen to find Lily baking flour dusting her sweater, hair pulled into a messy bun. The smell of cinnamon filled the air. "You bake?" he asked, almost surprised. "It helps me think," she said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She hesitated, then offered him a warm cookie on a napkin. He took it, biting into the soft sweetness. For the first time in weeks, his lips curved into something close to a smile. "It's good." Her eyes softened, and for a moment, the tension between them loosened. But not everyone was pleased with this shift. At a charity gala that weekend, Daniel escorted Lily for the first time in public. It wasn't a planned debut, just necessity. The whispers about his secret marriage had grown louder, and showing up with Lily was the only way to quiet speculation. The ballroom glittered, with crystal chandeliers and champagne flutes. Men in tuxedos and women in designer gowns turned as they entered. Daniel kept his hand lightly at Lily's back, a silent shield against the stares. Veronica was there, of course, in a scarlet dress that drew every gaze. She swept toward them with calculated grace. "Daniel," she said sweetly, "and this must be the mysterious Lily." Lily extended a polite hand. "Nice to meet you." Veronica's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I've heard so much about you. A secret wedding, a hidden bride. How romantic." Her words dripped with poison wrapped in silk. Lily held her composure, but Daniel could feel the tension radiating from her. "Excuse us," he said sharply, steering Lily away before Veronica could say more. Later that night, in the car ride home, Lily sat silently beside him. Finally, she spoke. "She hates me. She hates anything she can't control," Daniel replied. Lily looked out the window, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then I guess that makes two of us." Daniel turned to her, studying her profile in the passing city lights. For the first time, he saw not just the woman forced into his world, but someone strong enough to stand in it. And that realization unsettled him more than he cared to admit. The Midtown Project win bought Daniel breathing room with the board, but it didn't buy him peace. The whispers about his marriage lingered, floating through New York's high society like smoke no one could quite catch. And in the middle of it all was Lily. One evening, Daniel returned to the mansion later than usual. He expected silence, the usual dimly lit halls. Instead, he found music soft jazz spilling from the kitchen. He followed the sound to find Lily cooking. Sleeves rolled up, hair tied loosely, humming along with the tune. A pot simmered on the stove, the air rich with garlic and tomatoes. She startled when she noticed him. "Oh, I didn't expect you home." Daniel leaned against the doorframe, watching her. "Neither did I. What's all this?" "Dinner," she said, stirring the sauce. "I got tired of eating alone." Her honesty hit harder than she knew. For weeks, she'd eaten in silence at that long table while he'd buried himself in work. He hadn't considered what that silence felt like for her. "Smells good," he said quietly. She handed him a spoon. "Taste." He hesitated, then leaned in, tasting the sauce. Warm, savory, just enough spice. His brows lifted. "It's good." Lily smiled faintly. "Good. Then maybe you'll stay long enough to eat it." For the first time since their wedding, Daniel sat at the dining table with her. No staff, no catered meals, just 2 plates of pasta, a bottle of wine, and the soft rhythm of conversation. She asked about his day, and he surprised himself by answering honestly about the board's endless demands. The chaos of running Knight & Co. She listened without judgment, her chin resting on her hand, eyes attentive, and when he asked about her, she spoke of her sketches, the garden she'd been tending, the small comforts she carved out in a house too big for one person. The dinner was simple, but it felt more real than any gala or boardroom Daniel had endured in years. The shift was subtle, but once it began, it grew. Daniel found himself noticing details he'd overlooked before. The way Lily's hair caught the morning light when she read on the terrace. The quiet focus in her eyes when she sketched. The small, wry humor in her voice when she teased him about always wearing navy suits. One night, he came home exhausted, shoulders weighed down by contracts and shareholder calls. He found Lily asleep on the sofa, sketchbook still open on her lap. The drawing was of the mansion, but softened warm light spilling from the windows, ivy curling up the stone. She had drawn not the house as it was, but as she wanted it to be. He gently took the sketchbook, setting it aside. For a long moment, he just stood there, watching her breathe. Something in his chest tightened, unfamiliar and unwelcome. He reminded himself this marriage wasn't real. But his heart wasn't listening. Of course. Veronica noticed at the next industry fundraiser, she cornered Daniel by the bar. A glass of champagne in her manicured hand. "You're looking softer these days," she said, her eyes gleaming. "Rumor has it you've actually been dining at home." Daniel's jaw clenched. "If you're fishing, Veronica, drop the nets somewhere else." She leaned in, voice low. "You can't hide her forever. This city eats people like Lily alive. She doesn't belong, Daniel. And sooner or later, she'll learn that the hard way. Stay out of this," he warned. Her smile sharpened. "Or what? You'll protect her. With what's your name? Your fortune? Even you can't shield her from everything." The real test came a week later. Lily had gone into the city alone, slipping into a bookstore she loved. For an hour, she lost herself in rows of novels, breathing in the comforting scent of paper and ink. But when she stepped outside, she froze. 2 paparazzi stood waiting, cameras raised. "Mrs. Knight." One of them called, "Over here. Is it true the marriage was arranged? Did you marry him for money?" Flashes exploded in her face. Lily raised a hand, backing away. "No comment," she muttered, trying to push past. But the questions came faster, sharper. How much is the contract worth? Is Daniel keeping you hidden because he's ashamed? Did Veronica Hale tell the truth? Her chest tightened. The sidewalk tilted beneath her. Then suddenly, Daniel was there. He stepped between her and the cameras, his tall frame blocking the flashes. His voice was ice. Back off. She's not a story. She's my wife. The paparazzi hesitated, stunned. Daniel's glare could have cut glass. They lowered their cameras, muttering as they backed away. Daniel turned to Lily. Are you okay? She swallowed hard, blinking against the leftover flashes. I think so. He touched her arm, guiding her gently toward the car, waiting at the curb. For the first time, the word wife didn't sound like a contract. It sounded like something he meant, that night. Back at the mansion, Lily stood in the kitchen, staring at the marble countertop. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly when Daniel entered. Yes. I did, he replied. Her throat tightened. Why? He paused, then stepped closer. Because you don't deserve to face this alone. Not when it's because of me. She lifted her gaze, meeting his. For a moment, the air between them shifted, charged with something unspoken. Daniel. She whispered, but he stepped back, the walls rising again. Get some rest, he said, his voice softer now. Tomorrow will be worse. And he left her standing there, heart pounding, wondering when exactly the distance between them had begun to feel unbearable. The photo hit the tabloids the next morning. Daniel Knight protects mystery wife from paparazzi. The image showed Daniel shielding Lily on the sidewalk, his hand firm on her arm, his expression deadly serious. The headline spun it as everything from a knight in shining armor moment to proof of a scandal by noon. Every news outlet in Manhattan was running with the story. Talk shows speculated about Lily's background, her motives, her silence. Who was this woman who had somehow captured one of the city's most powerful men? And through it all, Veronica's voice slithered beneath the noise. She gave sly interviews, never confirming, never denying, always hinting. Daniel has a habit of attracting women who see him as more than a man. As an opportunity, she told one glossy magazine, I just hope, for his sake, this one is different. The implication was clear. Lily was a gold digger, a pawn, a mistake. At the Knight Mansion, Lily scrolled through article after article, each headline sharper than the last. Her photo, her face plastered across screens she never asked to be on. Lily Evans, a nobody from Brooklyn. The secret bride, was it all for money? Daniel Knight's hidden shame. Her chest tightened as she read the comments. Strangers dissected her clothes, her posture, her lack of pedigree. They didn't know her, but already they hated her. The phone rang. She let it buzz, too drained to answer. When it finally stopped, a text appeared. Unknown number. He'll drop you like the rest. Don't get comfortable. Her stomach knotted. She didn't need to ask who it was that evening. Daniel came home to find Lily sitting on the edge of the bed, her phone clutched in her hand. She looked pale, eyes red-rimmed, as though she'd been fighting tears. Lily, he said carefully, what happened? She held out the phone wordlessly. The text glared back at him. His jaw tightened. Veronica, I can't do this, Lily whispered. Her voice was raw, stripped of its usual calm. I thought I could just stay quiet, stay invisible. But now my name, my face, it's everywhere. People think I married you for money. They think I'm a joke. You're not, he he said firmly. They don't know that, she shot back. And they never will. Because in their eyes, I don't belong here. Veronica was right, I'll always be the outsider. Daniel crossed the room, crouching down so he was eye level with her. Listen to me. None of this matters. Not the headlines, not Veronica, not the whispers. What matters is that you're here. With me. Her eyes searched his, desperate for something solid to hold on to. But why am I here, Daniel? This marriage, her voice cracked. It was supposed to be a deal, a piece of paper. And now I don't even know what it is anymore. He reached for her hand. It's more than that. The honesty in his voice startled even him. But before Lily could respond, his phone buzzed. A message from his assistant. Board calling emergency meeting. Media pressure too high. Daniel swore under his breath. He stood, running a hand through his hair. I have to go. Lily looked at him, her heart sinking. Of course he had to go. Work always came first. The board, the company, the empire. She was just collateral. Go, she said quietly. That's who you are. That's who you'll always be. He froze, her words hitting deeper than she knew. But he didn't argue. He just left. The emergency board meeting was brutal. Veronica's statements are gaining traction, one director said. Investors are spooked. They think your marriage is reckless. That Lily Evans is a liability. Terminate the contract, another snapped. File for annulment. Distance yourself immediately. Daniel's fists clenched under the table. That won't happen. You're protecting her at the expense of this company, the chairwoman warned. If you continue down this path, we'll have no choice but to consider removing you. The threat was clear. His career, his legacy, everything he'd built was on the line. But all Daniel could think about was Lily. Sitting alone in that mansion, wondering if she was a mistake. Hours later, he returned home to find the house dark. He called her name, but no answer came. Finally, he found her in the garden, curled on the stone bench, sketchbook closed beside her. Her eyes were distant, reflecting the cold glow of the moon. I'm sorry, she whispered before he could speak. I didn't mean to make your life harder. He stepped closer. You haven't. Yes, I have. The board wants you gone. Investors doubt you. Veronica's winning, and it's all because of me. Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to tell her the truth, that the board had threatened to strip him of everything, that standing by her was costing him more than she realized. But instead, he said simply, I'd rather lose all of it than lose you. The words slipped out before he could stop them. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Lily shook her head, tears slipping free. Don't say that. Don't make this harder. She stood, brushing past him, leaving Daniel standing in the moonlit garden with the realization that for the first time in his life, power and control meant nothing compared to the woman walking away from him. The board's ultimatum hung over Daniel like storm clouds. He could feel the weight of their stares in every meeting, the cautious tones of investors in every call. To them, Lily was a weakness he couldn't afford, a liability, but to him she was the only part of his life that didn't feel hollow. 2 days later, Knight and co-hosted a high-profile charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Attendance was mandatory. Every industry titan, politician, and media outlet would be there. The board made it clear, if Daniel wanted to keep his position, he needed to show up alone. He didn't, When he arrived, Lily was at his side. The cameras exploded the moment they stepped out of the car. Flashes lit the marble steps as reporters shouted questions. "Mr. Knight, is this your wife? Why keep the marriage a secret? Ms. Evans, are you using him for money?" Daniel tightened his grip on Lily's hand, guiding her forward. His expression was stone, his posture unyielding, but inside, his heart pounded. He knew this was a line he couldn't step back from. Inside the museum's grand hall, chandeliers glittered overhead as the city's elite turned to stare. Whispered conversations rippled through the crowd. Veronica, dressed in emerald silk, stood near the stage, her smirk curling as she spotted them. "Bold move," she murmured when they passed, her voice just loud enough for Lily to hear. "Let's see how long it lasts." Lily's stomach twisted. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the polished marble floor. But Daniel's steady hand at her back kept her upright. The speeches began. Normally, Daniel would have delivered a practiced line about corporate responsibility and philanthropic duty. But tonight, as he stepped up to the podium, the weight of the board's threat and Veronica's poison sharpened his resolve. He scanned the crowd. His gaze found Lily, standing near the edge of the stage, her shoulders tense, eyes uncertain, and he made his choice. "I was told to come here tonight alone," he began, his voice carrying through the hall, "to protect appearances, to shield this company from questions it doesn't want to answer." A murmur rippled through the audience. "But I'm done hiding," Daniel continued. "Yes, I'm married. Yes, it was private. But not because I was ashamed. Because I wanted to protect someone who never asked for this world." Every eye in the room turned toward Lily. Her cheeks flushed under the scrutiny. "Her name is Lily Knight," Daniel said firmly. "She's not a liability. She's not a scandal. She's my wife. And if anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with me." The hall erupted gasps, whispers, a storm of flashes from the press. Daniel stood unflinching, every word a shield aimed at her. Veronica's smirk faltered, her eyes narrowing. The board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But for Lily, time seemed to stop. She felt the ground sway beneath her, not from fear, but from the realization that he'd chosen her publicly, unequivocally, in front of everyone who mattered in his world. After the gala, the car ride back was silent at first. Lily sat with her hands folded in her lap, staring out the window at the blur of city lights. Daniel watched her reflection in the glass, wondering if he'd just destroyed everything for nothing. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was quiet, but steady. "Why did you do that?" "Because I'm tired of pretending," he said. "Tired of letting them dictate my life. Tired of watching you suffer because of me." Her throat tightened. "Daniel, you put your entire career on the line. For me," he leaned closer, his voice low, raw. "It's not just for you. It's because somewhere along the way, this stopped being a deal. I don't care what they call you, Lily. Gold digger, outsider, mistake, I know who you are. And I want you here, with me." Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to lean into the warmth of his words. But the memory of headlines, Veronica's taunts, and the board's threats still clung to her like chains. "What if it's not enough?" she whispered. "What if love, whatever this is, can't survive in your world?" Daniel reached for her hand, his grip firm, grounding. "Then let's redefine the world." Together, her breath hitched. She searched his face, looking for the cracks, the lies, the performance. but there was none. For once, the man who ruled boardrooms and crushed competitors was stripped bare. Just a man, asking her to believe him. Lily's eyes burned with unshed tears. "I'm scared, Daniel. So am I," he admitted. "But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you." The car rolled through the quiet streets, carrying them toward a future uncertain, precarious, and, for the first time, real. Later that night, as Lily stood on the balcony of the mansion, the city sprawled out before her. She thought about the choice Daniel had made. He had defied his board, risked his empire, shattered his carefully built image all for her, and for the first time since their wedding, she began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, this marriage wasn't just paper anymore. The fallout from the gala was immediate. By morning, Daniel and Lily's names dominated every headline. Knight reveals secret wife trended on social media, dissected by morning talk shows and business analysts alike. Investors panicked. The stock dipped. The board convened an emergency session, and Veronica, never one to miss an opportunity, pounced. She appeared on a primetime news program that evening, perfectly composed in a jade green suit. The anchor asked the inevitable question, "Veronica, you've worked closely with Daniel Knight in the past. What's your take on his surprise revelation?" Her smile was razor-sharp. "Daniel is brilliant, no question. But brilliant men make mistakes. And rushing into a marriage with someone like Lily Evans, that's one of them." The anchor leaned in. "You believe this marriage is a mistake?" Veronica's eyes glittered. "Let's just say I've seen this pattern before. He confuses loyalty with love, pity with partnership, and in the end, it always costs him and everyone around him." The clip went viral within hours. Lily saw it playing on a television in the Knight mansion's kitchen, Veronica's words slicing through her like glass. When Daniel walked in later that night, he found Lily pacing the living room, her sketchbook abandoned on the couch. "She's right," Lily said abruptly. Daniel frowned. "What? She's right? This is a mistake. You've put everything on the line for me, your company, your reputation, your future. And for what? For someone who doesn't belong in your world. For someone the city sees as a fraud." He stepped forward, voice steady. "Stop. That's exactly what she wants you to believe. But maybe she's not wrong," Lily whispered. Her voice cracked. "Daniel, I can't keep being the reason your empire crumbles." Daniel's chest tightened. He'd fought boardrooms, markets, and rivals. But this, the woman he loved believing she wasn't enough, was the one battle he didn't know how to win. "You're not the reason, Lily," he said firmly. "You're the only reason any of this matters. The board, the company, it's just noise. You're the only thing that's real." Tears blurred her vision. She shook her head, torn between wanting to believe him and fearing the cost. The next day, Daniel faced the board. They demanded he resign, citing reckless behavior and personal distractions. Veronica sat in the back of the room, her expression smug, waiting for his fall. But Daniel didn't flinch. "You can take the company," he said coolly, "but you'll never take me. Knight & Co. exists because of me. If you think you can run it without me, go ahead. But I won't sacrifice my wife to keep your approval." The room erupted in chaos, board members shouting, investors gasping. Daniel left before they could vote, his shoulders squared, his decision final. That evening, he found Lily in the garden, sitting on the stone bench where she always sketched. The roses had begun to bloom, their scent thick in the air. "I quit," he said simply. Her head snapped up. "You, what?" "I quit the board, the company, all of it," he exhaled, the weight of years finally lifting. "I realized something today. I've spent my whole life fighting for control, for power, for approval, and none of it mattered. Not until you." She stared at him, stunned. "Daniel, you can't just—" "I already did." He stepped closer, kneeling so his eyes were level with hers. "I don't care if the city thinks you don't belong. You belong with me. That's all I want." Her throat tightened, tears spilling freely now. "Daniel." He reached for her hand, holding it firmly. "This marriage started as paper, but it's real now. At least for me. The only question is, do you want it to be real for you too?" The garden was silent except for the rustle of leaves. Lily's heart raced, the weight of choice pressing down on her. She thought of the headlines, the whispers, the relentless judgment. And then she thought of Daniel shielding her from the cameras, defending her to the world, giving up everything he'd built just to stand beside her. Slowly, she squeezed his hand. "Yes," she whispered. "I want it to be real." Daniel's chest loosened, a rare, genuine smile breaking through the steel of his features. He pulled her into his arms, and for the first time since their wedding, the embrace wasn't duty. It was love. The world didn't change overnight. The tabloids still ran stories, the city still gossiped, the boards still schemed, but in the mansion that had once felt like a prison, laughter began to echo through the halls. The dining table, once a place of silence, became a place of shared meals. The garden bloomed brighter than ever, its roses thriving under Lily's care, and Daniel, once a man defined by power, discovered that sometimes the greatest victory was surrender. Weeks later, as Lily sat sketching on the balcony, Daniel joined her, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. He handed her one, then leaned against the railing, watching the city glitter below. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly, walking away from Knight & Co. He shook his head. "No, I regret not walking toward you sooner," she smiled, setting her sketchbook aside. "You know the world won't stop coming for us." "Then let them," he said, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "As long as you're here, I'm ready for whatever comes next." And with the city sprawling endlessly before them, Daniel and Lily stood together, not just bound by paper, but by choice. Summer settled over New York with heavy heat, the kind that made the city feel both alive and suffocating. The tabloids had moved on to fresher scandals, politicians, celebrities, new billionaires with dirtier secrets. Daniel and Lily's names still appeared from time to time, but less often now, tucked into "Where Are They Now" columns instead of screaming headlines. For the first time in months, Lily could walk through the city without flinching at every flash of a camera. People still stared, whispered, but she was learning to breathe through it, learning to live again. The mansion had changed. To dot the long dining table that once echoed with silence now bore the marks of a lived-in home. Books stacked at one end, Lily's sketches pinned to the walls of the study, mugs of coffee left forgotten after late-night conversations. Daniel was different as well. No longer tethered to back-to-back board meetings, he spent more time in the garden than the office, though he still carried himself with the quiet authority of a man used to commanding rooms. But now, when he stood tall, it wasn't for shareholders or headlines. It was for her. One Sunday morning, Lily found him on the balcony, coffee in hand, looking out over the city. "Still miss it?" she asked, stepping up beside him. Knight and Co. He shook his head. Not the way I thought I would. She arched a brow. That's a careful answer, he smirked. I missed the fight, the challenge, but not the emptiness, not the way it consumed everything else. She sipped her coffee, studying him. You're not done fighting. You've just changed battlefields. He glanced at her, amused. And what's the battlefield now? She leaned against the railing, her hair brushing her shoulders. Us, choosing this every day, no matter what they say. His smile softened, rare and unguarded. Then that's a war I'll never surrender. By afternoon. They strolled through Central Park, blending into the crowds as best they could. Lily carried her camera, again a habit she'd abandoned during the worst of the scrutiny. She lifted it, snapping candid shots of children chasing pigeons, couples sprawled on blankets, the gleam of sunlight through leaves. Daniel watched her with quiet pride. You've got your spark back. I never lost it, she said, lowering the camera. It just dimmed for a while. She glanced at him. You gave me room to find it again. He reached for her hand. Or maybe you gave me a reason to slow down long enough to notice. They walked on in companionable silence, the noise of the park buzzing around them. For once, it didn't matter who might be watching that night. As the city lights glittered beyond their windows, Lily sat sketching at her desk. Daniel approached, slipping a folded piece of paper onto her pad. She looked up. What's this? Something I've been working on. Unfolding it, she found not contracts or business proposals, but a deed. A small brownstone in Brooklyn. Her eyes widened. You bought a house? For us, he said. Somewhere smaller, quieter, not a fortress. A home, her throat tightened. She traced the lines of the paper with trembling fingers. Daniel. He crouched beside her, voice low. This marriage started because of debt, obligation, paper, but I don't want paper anymore. I want choice. I want you. Her vision blurred with tears. For so long, she had felt like a guest in his world, temporary and fragile. But here, in this moment, he was offering her something different. Something real. She set the sketchbook aside and cupped his face in her hands. Then let's build it. Together, he kissed her, then not a brush of duty. Not a public statement, but something deep and certain. Weeks later, as moving boxes stacked against the walls of the brownstone, Lily snapped a photo of Daniel carrying a crate-labeled kitchen with a rare, boyish grin. She knew the picture would never run in a magazine, never make headlines. It was theirs alone, and for the first time since the day she stood in a chapel saying vows she didn't mean, Lily felt the truth settle into her bones. They were no longer bound by contracts or expectations, not by scandal or fear, not just paper. Real.